Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're looking again at pie charts. A little bit different today, but always remember to check out some of the other videos on this channel. They will go into a lot more detail about what we're doing here. I'm going to keep this video short for you. Remember, there is a sample, so if you want, you can just skip right ahead to the sample to see what you want to see. Today we'll be analyzing, organizing, and I'll show you a written response to the pie charts. And really important point, we'll be looking today at future tenses and different ways to talk about the future in IELTS Writing Task 1 Academic. All right, as always, everyone, I want you to start with analysis. Now, today's chart, I designed this. It's got a lot of detail. Don't worry about everything. Do what you know how to do. I want you to take 5 minutes, analyze the information here, and take notes. So let's take a look. The following charts show installed energy production for China and India in 2020, as well as projections for 2035. Yes, 2020 is in the past, so I want you to take a look and think about what the trends were in the past, and then I want you to look at 2035, and yes, that's these ones here, 2035 and 2020. And think about what changes are going to happen. You've got 5 minutes. Press pause on YouTube, and I'll see you in 5 minutes. All right, so I've moved over a little bit. Here I am, right in the middle. All right, let's take a look at this together. Now, what I've noticed as my overall is that coal is generally the biggest source despite the decreases. So you'll notice we have 56 down to 32, 65 down to 52. They both decrease. So I've gone with that as my main trend. However, do note that solar has increased in India. So now we look at the details. In India first, coal, as I said, goes down. Solar goes from 8 to 36. So that's a four-fold increase, all right? That is a huge increase for solar. Wind, also up to 17. Those two forms of sustainable energy have gone up. Hydro has gone down. Bio has gone down. Gas is down. And nuclear has no change. So if you ever get an IELTS task that is this filled with information, I would be thinking that I'm going to give more details about these ones, and I'm going to give less information about these ones. And in my response, you'll see that. All right, now looking at China, I'm not only looking at China by itself, but I'm making comparisons to India. So coal has decreased, similar to India. Hydro has decreased, similar to India. Wind increased, also similar. Now, it gets interesting here. Nuclear is up from 1 to 7%. That is a big change, a big increase, but it's different. So India's nuclear did not change. China's changed in a big way, 7-fold increase. Solar, this one is a bit of a surprise. So it goes from 0.2% to 2%. That means, yes, it is one of the smallest sources. In fact, I believe it is the smallest source. But it shows the most growth. That is massive growth. From 0.2 to 2, if you're an investor, you can see that is good change if you've invested in solar energy. So think about that. 0.2 to 1, that's 5-fold. That's huge relative increase. So this is one of the most important things, and you'll see it in my answer. The other ones, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Oil, gas, and other renewables. I don't have time to write about those in detail, and they're not that important. Let's take a look at the writing. All right, so this one's quite big. So remember, most of your IELTS tasks shouldn't be this big, but you'll get a lot of good information here about organization, grammar, and analysis. Let's take a look. The charts show installed energy. I haven't changed that much. Overall, coal is generally the most common energy source, despite some decrease in its use. I could also add here, solar in both cases shows the most growth. So I might add that in. So there it is. I've added that in, while solar shows the most growth. You could have one of those or both. It doesn't really matter. I've made the choice here that I think it's better to have both. Then we start with India. In India, coal is clearly a key source of energy, so I've got that in there. Note the use of the present simple. Since I'm talking about both the past and I'm talking about the future, when I'm talking about them together, I will use the present tense. Is, looks, very straightforward. In 2020, it was, so there we go to past, the main source, and accounted for 56%, and is expected to account for 32% in 2035. I might switch account for to make up. In fact, I'll change that. So there we go. It is expected to make up 32% in 35. Despite this drop, comma, it will remain the second most common source of energy. So I've highlighted, yes, it's going to fall, but it is still an important part of energy production in India. So I'm highlighting that trend, that it's decreasing, but still important. Conversely, solar energy shows a clear upward trend. It made up 8% in 2020, and by 2035 will have risen to 36%, 4 times its initial value. So you can see here I've got two different types of future tense. Is expected to make up. Then I've got here will have risen, future perfect. Very important. Wind is also expected to grow. In 2020, it accounted for 10% and is projected to have increased. So one thing you've got in this paragraph, 3 different ways already of expressing the future. They all look a little bit different. We're really using that future perfect tense here to really get our scores higher. It is projected to have increased to 17 by 2035. Nuclear, bio, hydro, and gas account for far less of overall production and are all expected to drop. So in this last paragraph, I just briefly mentioned them. You might even just not mention them. I think it's important to mention them, but just very quickly, one sentence and done. The other 2 pieces of information, so solar and wind and coal, I just think those are much more important. Now, moving on to China. Similarly, in China, coal is a key source of energy despite a projected decrease in production. All right, so I've given the overall of China, and I've made a comparison with India with that word similarly. In 2020, it made up 65% of energy production and is expected to fall, comma, dropping to 52% by 2035. Then, unlike India, it remains the main source of energy. So remember, in India, it was no longer the main source. In China, it will be. The next biggest source is hydro, which accounted for 22% in 2020, but is projected to decrease slightly, dropping to 18% by 2035. So the second biggest one I've given a bit more detail with, and you're going to see some decreases here after that. Other forms of energy increase, including nuclear, which projects massive growth, comma, accounting for a mere 1% in 2020, but expected to have risen 7% by 2035, which is an impressive amount of growth. Now, I could probably add, I'm going to make a quick change here. Just wait. There we go. Solar. Solar also accounts for very little in stark contrast to India. So again, I've compared solar to India. However, as it is projected to have increased from 0.2 to 2%. It shows tenfold growth, and the most growth of any energy source. So there's a really important point that I've reminded you of. Yeah, solar was only 2%, but it grew the most. Now, I'm not saying it's the most important, but I am highlighting that. So always remember, don't just look at the big trends, look at the small trends. If you're aiming for that higher score, if you notice those smaller important trends, you have more opportunity to highlight and more opportunity to use better grammar. And then finally, if we look here, wind, oil, and gas make up very little of the overall energy output. I've just left that really simple. I haven't mentioned other renewables at all. You can leave out details if there's a lot of information. In this situation, take another look at it, see what I've put in, see what I've left out, and I hope you found that helpful. As always, everyone, please like, subscribe, and leave your comments down at the bottom. It's always appreciated. Remember that language is a habit, so you want to practice a lot. You want to practice till you get it right, then keep going until you can't get it wrong. That is the important thing. I know sometimes these videos are easy to understand, but you need to then internalize the ideas so that when the test comes, you don't think, you just write. Amazing things will happen. I believe in you, and I'll see you again soon.